internal combustion engine works. First, we need to start off by explaining the main parts of the engine. First, what we have here, if I can get this out on time. This is a spark plug. A spark plug is a part of the engine that is supposed to ignite the fuel and air that is already in the engine head. I've hold the tops down with some rubber bungee cords, because when I'm going to show you how the pistons work, so that the piston heads, which are these, won't come off. Well, like I said, these are the piston heads. This is where the spark plugs go, and these are supposed to go on top so that no fuel or explosion can escape the combustion chamber. Now, this is part of the cylinder. The cylinder is to keep the fuel in as well, and same thing with the piston heads, except this time this helps direct the piston that is inside the engine already. And it is also on this side. Another cool thing about this part right here is that this is also where the fuel and the air and the exhaust will go in. This side, the fuel will come in, same with the air, and on this side, exhaust will come out. And this right here is a metal gasket. This is supposed to make sure that there is no external interference with the fuel or any issues with the combustion inside. Also on here, there is also supposed to be somewhere here, there's supposed to be a paper gasket that had unfortunately ripped, so that we cannot show that part because it is gone. Now, this part right here is the actual piston. This piston will go up and down depending on which part of the cycle it's in. If it's in the compression and the squeeze, if it's on the squeeze or the exhaust part, it would be going up in the cylinder so that it would compress the fuel or it would push out the exhaust. When it's going down, that means it's either sucking in fuel and air or the fuel is actually combusting inside the cylinder itself. Now, under these pistons is the crankshaft. I cannot take this part apart right now, but trust me, on the inside of this, under the pistons, where they are connected, is the crankshaft. This is the part that actually helps the vehicle move, connected to the gearbox, and then eventually to the drivetrain. We won't get into that far now. We're only focusing on the engine right now. Now, right here, this is a part of the dynamo. The dynamo is the part that will help bring electricity to the spark plugs at the top of these piston heads, or the cylinder heads. Now, in here there are magnets. This is a two-stroke, two-cylinder engine. So it will be two strokes for those 4 different stages of the engine. In a 4-stroke engine, like in your average car that you own today, there will be those 4 strokes will be for those 4 different stages. These are also a part of the dynamo. The dynamo's job is to make its own electricity. So that means once the engine, in this engine, there will be a crank that you have to pull on a rope so that it would spin the motor, making electricity out of this dynamo. This dynamo piece is broken because when I started taking this apart earlier, the bolts and nuts were stripping. So that means my screwdriver or my wrench was making so that the metal would actually come off the bolt or nut itself. So I ended up smashing the dynamo parts itself. In an alternator, which we'll see in your car these days, it would have to have the help of a battery, so that once the engine is started, the alternator will start making electricity after the battery gives it enough electricity. gives it a little boost. Now, if I put all of these parts back together, if I can get them back together, no, I got that wrong way. Now, trust me when I say this, the engine is a very complex machine. This uses multiple different forms of simple machines. This one, right now, I'm using a form of lever almost, except this is a 360-degree lever, I believe. Now, I don't think you're able to see this, but if you were able to look right in here, what would happen is that the pistons in here are going up and down every time I move this. Now, if there was fuel in here and air in this spark plug were to ignite the fuel and air, what happens is that the fuel would explode. Right now, this piston is down, so this is when it's sucking in fuel. It would compress, and then right now it would combust. That is meaning that the piston is now pushed down, providing the power and torque. And then eventually this one will do the same thing, pushing this one back up, pushing the exhaust out. This one is already pushed down. This one will now start sucking in, back up. This will constantly keep going until, of course, you run out of fuel or something is wrong with the engine. Another interesting part of an engine is that diesel engines actually don't have spark plugs. Diesel engines are actually their combustion part is the same 4-stroke system as your average car, except the only difference is that it doesn't have the spark plugs. What happens is that once the fuel is actually compressed enough, the fuel will combust itself. So that means there's no spark plug needed. It is you can't necessarily ignite it with a match. It has to be compressed for it to actually combust and actually do the whole system like it's supposed to in a normal engine. This engine came from a snowmobile, so this one was, of course, going to be a 2-stroke engine. There are some other 4-stroke engines that are more powerful. For example, a lawnmower engine is also a 2-stroke engine, but that is only supposed to power a lawnmower, not necessarily anything else. A car, like a V8 engine, would have a V formation instead of this inline engine where the pistons are in line with each other. If you were to have an inline 6, there would be these two pistons farther out. In a V8 engine, the engine would be tilted back like this, and there would be another side facing inwards, shaping in like a V. W engines are a little different. W engines are pretty much just 2 V8s bolted together, except it's a little different than that. Instead, a V8 actually has kind of like 2 inline 4s in a V shape. In a W engine, like a W12, would actually have 6 cylinders in a kind of a zigzag pattern. And now that is the whole W-shaped part, and then it actually configures in some type of weird V8 shape. Not 100% sure how that design works, but that's all I can tell. That's all I know. Some other interesting parts is that the starter motor is what the battery is originally supposed to be powering to help start your 4-stroke cylinder engine. This one is started with manpower, so that means you have to pull a crank before you do anything. And that is all for today. Thanks for watching.